Hello, everybody. My name is Colby Cavallo, and I'm doing my final project on two very special saints, Saint Kolbe and Saint Acutis. Prior to my experience with this course, I had little to no knowledge of the saints, but thanks to Father Martin's series, I've been able to learn plenty of them. These two, however, were not on the list. Okay. Before talking about Saint Maximilian Kolbe and Saint Carlo Acutis, it's important to understand what it means to be a saint. In the Catholic Church, a saint is someone who lived a life of exceptional holiness and faithfully followed Jesus Christ. The Church recognizes these individuals because of the way they lived out the gospel and because their lives continue to inspire others to grow in faith. Let's not get this confused, okay? Saints are not perfect people. They've experienced struggles, fears, mistakes, challenges just like everyone else. And what makes them different is that they consistently chose to trust God and dedicate their lives to serving Him. Because of this, they're considered role models for Christians today. The two saints I will be discussing are Saint Maximilian Kolbe and Saint Carlo Acutis, who both lived in very different time circumstances, but both responded to God's call to holiness in extraordinary ways. Their stories show that becoming a saint isn't just about being famous or living a perfect life. It's about faithfully living the gospel every single day. Saint Maximilian Kolbe was born on January 8th, 1894, in Poland. As a child, he was known for being energetic, curious, and deeply religious. As he grew older, he joined the Franciscan order and eventually became a priest. He had a strong devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary and believed that people could grow closer to Jesus through her example. He founded the militia of the Immacul of the Im, I have a really hard time pronouncing this. Immaculata, an organization dedicated to spreading the Catholic faith. Colby also recognized the importance of communication. He published Catholic magazines and newspapers, and even used the radio broadcast to share the gospel. At a time when these forms of media were becoming more and more popular, he saw them as opportunities to reach people who might never hear the message of Christ otherwise. Even before the events that made him famous, Colby had already spent years serving others, promoting peace, and encouraging people to deepen their relationship with God. The defining moment of St. Maximilian Kolbe's life came during World War II. After Germany invaded Poland, Kolbe continued serving others despite the dangers around him. His monastery became a refuge for thousands of people, including many Jewish refugees who were fleeing persecution. He believed that every person deserved compassion and dignity. Oh, sorry. Regardless of their background. Eventually, Kolbe was arrested by the Nazis and sent to Auschwitz, one of the most infamous concentration camps in history. Even in the camp, though, he continued to comfort fellow prisoners, praying with them and encouraging them not to lose hope. In July of 1941, a prisoner escaped from Auschwitz. As punishment, the camp commander selected 10 men to be locked in a starvation bunker until they died. One of the chosen prisoners cried out that he would never see his wife and children again. Hearing this made Kolbe step forward and offer to take the man's place. The Nazis accepted his request, and for nearly 2 weeks, Kolbe prayed. Eventually, when he was the last survivor, he was killed by lethal injection. The man whose life he saved survived the war and lived many years afterwards. In 1982, Pope John Paul II canonized Maximilian Kolbe and called him the Martyr of Charity because he freely gave out his life out of love for another person. How does Kolbe model Christian life? St. Maximilian Kolbe is remembered not simply because he died, but because of the way he lived throughout his life. One of the greatest Christian values he demonstrated was sacrificial love. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Colby lived out those words literally by giving his own life so another man could live and see his family and kids. He also showed incredible courage. Most people would naturally think about saving themselves in such a terrifying situation, but Colby chose to love instead of fear. I'm sorry. Finally, Colby reminds Christians that holiness is often found in everyday choices, before it is seen in heroic moments. His years of prayer, service, and devotion to Mary, and care for others prepared him to make the ultimate act of love when the opportunity came. His life teaches us that following Christ means loving others selflessly, trusting God in difficult times, and standing firm in our faith, even when it requires great sacrifice. Next saint, Saint Carlo Acutis. Saint Carlo Acutis was born on May 3rd, 1991. He's almost my age. In London, England, while his parents were working there. Shortly after his birth, his family moved to Italy, where he spent most of his childhood. From a young age, Carlo showed a deep love for God that surprised many people around him. Though his parents were not especially religious at the time, Carlo's faith inspired them to become more active in the church. Carlo was an extraordinary teenager in many ways. He loved playing soccer, hiking, spending time with his friends, caring for animals, and using computers. Remember that. He also enjoyed video games, although he limited the amount of time he spent playing them. One of the most important parts of Carlo's life was the Eucharist. Beginning at a young age, he attended Mass frequently and spent time in the Eucharistic adoration. He believed that receiving Jesus in the Eucharist helped him grow closer to God and become a better person. Carlo once said, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." Okay. Carlo believed that everyone has unique gifts from God, and he wanted to use his talents to help others. Since he was skilled with computers and tech, he taught himself programming and web design. Rather than using those skills only for entertainment, like I probably would have been doing, he created a website documenting Eucharistic miracles from around the world. His goal was to help people better understand and appreciate the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Carlo also lived out his faith through simple acts of kindness. He defended his classmates who were bullied, treated everyone with respect, and regularly helped people experiencing homelessness by bringing them food, sleeping bags, and other necessities. He believed that loving God meant loving the people around him. In 2006, when Carlo was just 15 years old, he was diagnosed with leukemia. Even while suffering from his illness, he remained positive and offered his pain to God, for the Pope, and the Church. He died later that year, but his witness continued to inspire people throughout the world. After the Church recognized the miracles attributed to his intercession, Carlo was canonized in 2025, becoming one of the first saints of the digital age. Saint Carlo Acutis is a model of Christian life because he reminds us that holiness is possible in everyday life, especially for young people. Unlike many saints who were priests or religious sisters, Carlo was simply a student who tried to live the gospel each day. One way Carlo modeled the Christian life was by putting God first. He made prayer, the Eucharist, and the Mass the center of his daily routine. His faith wasn't something practiced only on Sundays. It influenced the way he treated others in everyday life. He also used his talents to serve God. Instead of seeing technology as something to separate him from his faith, Carlo used his knowledge of computers to evangelize. I'm so stupid. Evangelize and share the gospel with the people around the world. This shows that our own gifts and interests can also be used to make a positive difference. Finally, Carlo lived with kindness, humility, and generosity. He cared for the poor, stood up to people who were treated unfairly, stood up for people who were treated unfairly, and showed compassion to everyone he met. His life teaches us that becoming a saint doesn't require doing something extraordinary every day. Instead, it means faithfully following Jesus through our everyday choices. Carlo's example encourages all of us, especially young people, to recognize that we can begin living a holy life right now by putting God first, serving others, and using our talents to build God's kingdom. As we've seen throughout this presentation, Saint Maximilian Kolbe and Saint Carlos Acutis lived in very different times and different circumstances. But they both answered God's call to holiness in remarkable ways. Kolbe showed heroic love. Kolbe showed Kolbe showed heroic love and courage by sacrificing his life for another person during one of history's darkest moments. Carlo showed that holiness can also be found in everyday life by putting God first, serving others, and using his talents to spread the gospel. I hope that this presentation has shown that St. Maximilian Kolbe and St. Carlo Acutis continue to inspire Christians today because they demonstrate that an ordinary life, when lived with extraordinary faith, can have a impactful, lasting impact on the world. Thank you everybody for watching. Mr. Dem, it's been a great summer. I hope you have a great rest of your summer and have a good one.